We've all learned that anger is an emotion we shouldn't feel. If we do, that means we're unenlightened, or immature, not spiritual, a terrible person, or any number of other judgmental and unfair labels. But how many of us stop to consider what anger actually is? Anger is not a primary emotion, but rather, anger is a reaction to something uncomfortable in our experience. Generally speaking, it's a reaction to an uncomfortable feeling in the body. I like to think that there are three layers of anger. What we often call anger is actually just the outward manifestation of it. Shouting, punching a wall, throwing a vase across the room, flipping off someone in traffic. But this isn't actually anger. It's a coping mechanism to distract ourselves from the discomfort rising in the body in a moment when we find ourselves experiencing something we do not want to experience. There's a turbulence between what we wanted to happen, being able to pull into that perfect parking spot, and what actually happened, someone else speeding up and taking the spot first. And that turbulence causes a cascade of sensations in the body in less than a blink of an eye. And that turbulence caused bodily discomfort may be intense. We might feel like our body is thrumming, vibrating, like it's carrying too much voltage for our wiring, but often we learn to restrain it, suppress it, bite our tongue, count to 10. And this also feels like getting angry, even if we resist the urge to externalize it and take a baseball bat to the car of the person who stole our spot. But that high voltage discomfort is also not itself anger. It too is a defense or a distraction from feeling something even more uneasy and unapproachable that lurks a layer beneath. It could be something like a feeling of sadness or of insecurity, of hopelessness, or of impotence to get what you want from a challenging, hostile world. When we encounter something that is contrary to the way we would like it to be, that can activate the replaying of old emotional patterns, like an old tape loop that runs over and over every time the button is pushed. We often have certain limiting beliefs that we've held about ourselves, and without being aware of it, these beliefs have been silently directing our behavior for years and decades. And sometimes we encounter people or events that seem to reinforce or press play on the tape loop of one of those limiting beliefs. All of this happens below the conscious threshold, and it's so fast that it's easy to overlook the entire process and believe that throwing a plate of spaghetti on the floor is a perfectly reasonable response to someone saying that your sauce could use a little salt. If you have a history of feeling less than, or of being judged by others or yourself, or if you were routinely chastised for your cooking ability by a previous partner, that insignificant comment can be enough to activate that old feeling pattern of unworthiness, or ineptitude, or never being good enough. And that belief brings with it an uncomfortable bodily state. So, in order to keep from having to feel something that raw and possibly even too sensitive to acknowledge, we immediately respond with a distraction. And often that distraction is a rush of what we generally call anger. But again, what is that anger? It's something just a little less unpleasant than the original emotional sensation which underlies it. Why it seems to help is multifold. For one, the feeling of anger comes with its own sort of power. It can be laced with indignation, with righteousness, with an ego-bolstering self-defense. Rather than diminishing the sense of identity, it supersizes it. It makes the ego more important and worthy of self-expression than everyone else unlucky enough to be in its vicinity. Secondly, since we can only feel one emotion at a time, this righteous, pious ego boost takes the place of the contracted, self-chastising, powerless feeling that preceded it. It not only takes its place, it blows it out of your body with a gust that inflates you from the one who is always wrong to the one who is always wronged. You are suddenly the one in the right, and that feels so much better. It makes you feel like you're in a position of control. You are justified in lashing out, and you have the unchecked ability to do so. And it does so by taking all of that inwardly directed discomfort of the little, sad, never good enough being, and instead points all of that attention outwards onto someone or something else. It's not your fault for cutting your thumb instead of the tomato. It was that damn knife that's got too slippery of a handle. It's not your sauce that's too bland. It's that other idiot who has no sense of taste. It doesn't matter how silly or off base the justification is. It only matters that it puts the blame and focuses the attention somewhere outside of the body. Being in the body with feelings like shame and unworthiness can be very difficult for us. So instead, we turn our awareness out into the world, largely numbing ourselves to the messages and signals being constantly conveyed by the body, ultimately making it so much harder to feel all but the most intense aspects of the bodily experience. For instance, when you catch yourself feeling angry, you might sense your heart pounding, hear a ringing in your ears, or feel your face getting hot. But there are so many other biological reactions that start long before that stage that we routinely overlook because we are so adept at diverting our attention outside where it's less painful. Let's do a little investigation of this. Find a relaxing position. It could be sitting, it could be lying down, it doesn't matter. Just be somewhere and in a position where you can remain alert and not distracted. Take a few deep breaths to settle the body and mind before we rile it up again. Now bring to mind a situation that tends to make you angry. Maybe not something that immediately boils your blood to where you go into an uncontrollable fit, but something with a bit of a charge. Just picture the situation without adding any commentary to it. So, if your trigger is someone chewing loudly, just remember the sound of them smacking their food and feel where in the body you start to feel some new sensations. Or if you had an incident where someone said something to you that made you lash out and give them a piece of your mind, just remember the situation, perhaps like you're seeing a still snapshot of the incident, and keep aware of what arises in the body in response to it. Does this feel like anger yet? It's not necessary to mentally trace back to the roots of your trigger, like that time when you were 9 and someone on the playground said a similar thing to you. If a spontaneous memory pops up that seems relevant, that's great. Make a mental note of it and release it. The important insight is recognizing that you're just reusing old reactions in a new situation. Let that sink in, and then let the memory go. Don't indulge in the story of it. That only functions to reinforce the sense of identity, which is already strengthening itself through your identification with being angry, or the victim, or the one in the right who needs to set everyone straight. If you've lost the thread because you've been listening to me, bring your incident to mind again. Now see if what arises is really so uncomfortable that you can't sit with it just as it is. We might at first feel like it is. You might feel the urge to squirm and deflect or abandon the exercise or get up to go to the fridge for a snack, or just notice a thought about how pointless this is or how you should really get up and start cooking dinner. But just notice that impulse to run away in thought or in action and come back to the discomfort in the body. Is it really as unbearable as the mind first claims it to be? Do you really need to do anything to get away from it? What if it stayed like this for the rest of your life? If you feel like you can't possibly bear this forever, that you'll have to stop at some point or else you'll scream or go insane, just recognize that there is no forever. The only moment you ever have to endure anything is this one right here. That's it. There never is and never was any other moment. So can you bear the discomfort for just this one lone instant? Good. Now how about this one? Also, notice if the discomfort is even still here anymore. Did it already vanish? Without our constantly rekindling its fire, the feelings of anger and its predecessors will generally only last for seconds at a time. It's always thoughts that blow on the embers moment after moment, keeping the flames alive, sometimes stoking a tiny warm glow into a raging inferno. Instead, by starving it of thought, we're starving the fire of oxygen. It can't continue without fuel. So keep coming back to the sensations in the body and recognize how bearable and fleeting they really are. Do you really want to keep the fire burning? If anger, and especially the lashing out manifestation of it, continues to be a problem for you during the day, see if you can get acquainted with the sensations that presage an emotional outburst. Even if it's uncomfortable, notice when you are in a situation where you are routinely triggered, be it in traffic, at work, or with a certain family member. What is the sequence of sensations in the body that lead up to that releasing outburst? Do you first notice tension somewhere in the body? Maybe a sense of contraction, a feeling like you're being cornered, trapped, helpless, like you need to push back in order to protect yourself? Notice every step of the escalation, the energetic rush in the torso, the changes in your breathing, the increasing heart rate, the clenching of your jaw, tightness in your hands or toes, feeling gradually warmer as the body begins shaking. Get intimately acquainted with all of the sensations that become what we label anger. Know your reactivity from the inside. With practice, you'll likely find that you will start to recognize the sensations earlier and earlier, and might not get caught up in a full forest fire of rage every time. Maybe not at all. And to be clear, it's okay to get angry. Emotions will come and they will go. That angry feeling might arise as a flashing moment of discomfort, but see if you need to do anything with that. Is it okay to allow it to be there and then pass like a summer thunderstorm? It's not productive to judge yourself for being angry. That judgment is just another layer of identification. Again, you're the one who isn't far enough along on the path, the one who isn't there yet. Recognize the impersonal nature of the arising and passing of anger. It's simply an emotional weather pattern that blows through all on its own. Must we take ownership like we consciously choose every emotion we witness throughout the day? However, this is not to say that you need to outwardly express your anger. This is not a license to lash out at or physically assault others. Remember that lashing out or expressing of anger is just a deflection from experiencing what's really going on deeper down. This is a call to develop your awareness of your internal state so you can discover that you can be in the body, that you have the inner strength to remain in the emotional discomfort without needing to project your awareness and your frustrations outwards towards others. At times, if you're dealing with a lot of pent-up rage, it might be useful to punch a pillow or scream into a pillow or vigorously shake your body to dissipate the excess energy. But ultimately, if we use a practice to release some of the emotional steam, we want to use it as another form of inquiry. Observe all of the internal stages leading up to the punching of the pillow, as well as precisely what is going on in your body and mind during the punching and immediately after. This is all fertile ground for exploration, so don't waste any of it. The more well acquainted you get with the precursors to these outbursts, the more you will likely find that your reactivity begins to lessen, that you're no longer being triggered so easily. Someone can insult you in a way that used to require an immediate backlash, and now maybe you'll find that there's nowhere for the insult to land. There might be an initial flush of discomfort if it still feels like an echo of an old wound, but the sensation fades quickly back into nothing. It's like a reaction tries to start, but there's no fuel for it anymore. It's just an unnecessary spark trying to exist in a vacuum. but this can take repeated practice and some insight, especially for people who are prone to deflection through anger. But no one is ever a lost cause. To recap, find a comfortable posture in a place free from distraction, and then simply ignite the spark of emotion with a memory or thought about a certain triggering event. Then feel whatever sensations arise in the body, seemingly in response to it. See if you can just sit with that sensation without doing or thinking anything to distract yourself from it. Notice if it's really as unbearable as it claims to be at first encounter, and then see how long it lasts if you don't continue feeding it with more thoughts about the situation. You can also inquire into the following. Do you really need to react? Do you really need to deflect from these sensations? Is it okay that things are simply the way they are, even if they aren't the way you would prefer? Can you be okay with life happening without at first asking your permission? Do people, events, and situations need to change for you to be comfortable in your skin? How would reacting to this situation help change it for the better? Again, can you find any reason you need to react? And maybe most importantly, is there any connection at all between the sensations in your body and the reactions of thinking, moving, yelling, or any other distractions you might use? That's a good place to start. You might be amazed at the way that this simple practice can transform your life off of the mat. Until next time, happy inquiring.